More variety.
We ain't one at a time in here. We're mass communicating.
You're listening to Para-X.
Stirring the Cauldron is sponsored by McGovern Tour Design, creative custom tours featuring you as the tour leader. McGovern Tour Design creates itineraries that focus on your special interest. Coming up on September 16th through the 21st, 2012, join legendary ghost hunters Richard and Debbie Sennett in a thrilling tour of haunted places and bizarre history in the historic Comstock area of Northern Nevada on their Silver Ghosts of Northern Nevada tour, where history and haunts walk hand in hand. You'll have the chance to take part in psychic experiments and even be part of a seance at the historic and very haunted St. Mary's Art Center, a former hospital where a white-robed lady walks. For more information about creating your own personalized tour or joining in the Silver Ghosts of Northern Nevada tour, please visit their website at www.mcgoverntourdesign.com or call 818-518-5786. Tours are open to those 18 and older.
Some night, when it's very dark, listen to the wind as it blows through the trees. It seems to carry strange sounds, possibly even someone's name. Old Mother Leeds. Old Mother Leeds lived down Jersey on the edge of a great swamp. All the folks who lived nearby claimed she was a witch. She had 12 children. They say she got tired of raising all those children, so when it came time for the 13th child, she cast an ancient curse upon it. And the child was born with the head of a horse, with big horns growing out the side. The child had long, sharp-pointed fangs for teeth, and great big round bug eyes shining like two big burning coals. On the ends of its paws, there were long, sharp-pointed claws. The child had feet just like a goat, and growing out of the child's back were two great big, long, pointed wings, just like a giant bat. On the night he was born, Mother Leeds' 13th child let out a horrible, blood-curdling scream and flew up the chimney and disappeared into the woods. Many people have seen this critter late at night, when the lamplight flickers and all the skeeters stop buzzing and the clouds cover the moon. Some people have claimed their cows have been scared by something late at night, and the next day the milk turns sour. Tool sheds and outbuildings have been turned upside down. Places in the forest have been scorched, and strange footprints have been found round about. Have you seen Mother Leeds' 13th child? Next time you roam through the woods late at night, take care. When you hear the leaves begin to rustle, beware. When the wind blows in off the ocean, beware of the Jersey Devil.
Cheeks and warm the heart, for tread the circle thrice about to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron here on the Para-X Radio Network. Tonight we're going back east, all the way to the famed Jersey Shore, with authors Richard Kimmel and Karen Timper, and we're going to learn about the shore's folklore, history, supernatural, and beyond. Now, Richard and Karen are a father and daughter writing team, and a perfect match for relating these unusual tales. Karen founded the New Jersey Ghost Organization in 2003, and Richard has traveled along on many of the team's investigations. Now, some of you may remember Richard as being a guest on my show talking about a couple of his other books, World War II Ghosts and Ghosts of Central New Jersey, and Karen is also an author of Journey into the Unknown. Richard, Karen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marla. Thank you. Good to be here again.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Well, before we get talking about the book on the Jersey Shore, how did the shore and some of its locations you wrote about in the book fare in the wake of Hurricane Sandy?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one.
Well,
that's a tough one.
It is really tough. You know,
yeah. They say Seaside's gone, and Ortley Beach is gone, and you know, just the devastation to the, well, I think it actually hit head-on in Atlantic City, which was a little bit above Cape May and Wildwood, but I think a lot of the little shore towns, you know, suffered some damage.
Mm.
You know, the roller coaster in, I guess it's Seaside, is in the ocean, and the pictures were just devastating. We here, like, we're in central New Jersey. My dad's a little south of us by about an hour. I'm closer to, like, Keyport, Keensburg, Asbury Park. I'm like a half an hour from Asbury Park. And we lost our power for a solid week.
Oh.
And we didn't see a newspaper in a few days. And when we finally did, the pictures in the newspaper didn't even do it justice when we got our power back and were able to see the devastation on the news.
Mm.
You know, and then they had a concert on Jersey's radio station 101.5, and that's on FM, and they had a concert with Bruce Springsteen and, you know, the Jersey guys, Bon Jovi, and, you know, some New York singers, Billy Joel and things like that. So we only got to hear them on the radio, and then when the power finally came back on, we got to see the benefit concert that they did, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, you know, you never think it's going to happen to you,
mm-hmm.
you know, and then it does, you know, but we were lucky. We only lost food in the refrigerator. People, they lost their homes, their businesses, yes. their cars, family members,
mm-hmm.
you know, and it's heartbreaking. The Jersey Shore is the ultimate. You know, you've got East Coast, West Coast, and, you know, you're lucky enough to be on the West Coast, and with all the great things that are out there, you know, Los Angeles, Hollywood, you know, all those things, and then you've got the Jersey Shore, you know.
I'm only about 10 or so from Seaside, and that just about got wiped out, that barrier island. Just unbelievable. I've seen pictures of it, but I have a meeting every month with my disabled veterans group, and our building, which is owned by the township that we meet in, we can't meet in there now until everything gets, you know, back to normal again.
Right.
You know, so we're meeting somewhere else, but the devastation there was terrible.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, there's nothing anybody can say more than that, much more than that. But, you know, being from the West Coast myself, as you mentioned, I don't know all that much about the Jersey Shore, I mean, except about Atlantic City and stuff. So could you give us a little bit of a background about it before we get into the folklore?
Sure. Atlantic City, think about, they've got a great show on HBO right now called Boardwalk Empire, and to me that was just the epitome of Atlantic City, you know, back during Prohibition and things like that. And that's how I like to visualize Atlantic City. It's very mysterious. You know, we've had pirates on the Jersey Shore, actually all up and down the eastern seaboard. So it makes it interesting. I mean, there's a lot of truth, you know, in the folklore of New Jersey. And, it's pretty interesting, what's gone on, shipwrecks and, different things. It's just an interesting place, New Jersey's kind of like, I always looked at like the armpit of America because, you've got Jersey, but then you've got Long Island that goes out there, and it kind of reminds me of an arm, and people always make fun of New Jersey, but New Jersey is a really interesting place.
Yeah, and so the shore runs the entire, because I'm really bad at geography too, the shore runs the entire length of the state?
Pretty much, yeah.
And
pretty much.
That is considered the Jersey Shore.
I think they consider it beginning at up around Perth Amboy, New Jersey, up in that area, the actual, Jersey Shore. The rest of it's going into New York, Staten Island now, up into that particular area. And it actually continues down the East Coast, and even around the tip of Cape May. And some of the people even consider the shore area going up the Delaware River.
Right, the Delaware, on the west side of New Jersey.
Okay. That kind of gives me a better mental picture of it. We're going to be talking about the historical events that may have given birth to the legends at the shore. Is there, in either of your minds, one particular legend that stands out above all others?
There's one that you really like, Karen.
Oh, the Jersey Devil.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's talk about the little beastie that you told me right before you came on. Really is a little beastie. He's only supposedly 3 feet tall, right?
That's what I've read. I mean, a lot of things that I've read and seen. People, the way they've described him, he or she, I guess it's a he, they describe it as about 3 feet tall, and, it's got the wings of a bat, and it's got cloven hooves, it's got like the head of a horse, but, as people describe it when they say, head of a horse, they're thinking it's a very large animal, which it really, it isn't, and, it's pretty interesting how the story started. So, this is, I mean, gosh, I guess as old as we were to walk and go down the shore, you've heard stories about the Jersey Devil. And, New Jersey's hockey team is the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, we've heard of them too, yeah.
So there's a lot of, there's a lot of references, to the Jersey Devil. But, personally, we've never seen it. But, I'm sure there have been people that have claimed to have seen it, going back, I think, as far as Benjamin Franklin, so.
I think it's the pieces of folklore in New Jersey. At least it's the most publicized one.
Right.
People don't realize how much folklore there really is in New Jersey. And when we start to look into it, it even boggled my mind to realize how much there is here. As the book indicates, which I said you'll get into in a little while, but it's just, it's just an experience I knew it to do what we did, and to put this book together like this. But, what we initially tried to do with this is not there's so many books on folklore out there, that we wanted to do something unique, something different. So what we decided to do was to add the paranormal twist to it. Mm-hmm. And it happens that a lot of our major investigations that the group has done actually ties in with some of the folklore. So it worked out very well, but it was very difficult to do, to be different than what's out there now. So, and Karen had a lot to do with this, believe me. She did a lot of legwork with this.
Well, yeah, and I imagine the deeper that you looked, the more things turned up. I mean, there could ostensibly be a book 2 because, dig a little deeper and you'll jump in the hole and find a whole lot of stuff down there.
Exactly. The more people you talk to, the more stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. We probably haven't even scratched the surface, and that's what we find with a lot of the, a lot of the stuff that, even some of the legwork that went into my dad's first two books, when he was working on those books, and especially the second book, he asked me if he can dig deep into, my group's files and look through some of the investigations. And, and we as a group haven't even scratched the surface. We've only been doing this for about 10 years, and we haven't even scratched the surface. But, but it's interesting, the more people that you talk to, the more stories you hear, and you really don't hear too many variations of the same story either.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of so. Getting back to the devil for a second. So was it, as the beginning of my show stated, Mother Leeds, was she this evil witch that had 12 other children and kind of cursed herself into giving birth to a devil?
We don't know. I've heard stories that her husband was a drinker, and she, maybe it was in her mind, that this whole persona was created, to escape, a horrible husband. There's been so many different versions, most of the story has the same aspects to it, but you hear a little different twists and turns here and there. But I believe it was probably, a very large family, as most were, back, in earlier times. And I don't know, how you always hear about the haunted house up on the hill, or the haunted house down the street. So people probably made up stories about this very large family, but, there's been quite a good, you being out on the West Coast, there's been some pretty good movies made. I think there was one starting to come to the surface a few years ago about the Jersey Devil, and, how it sprouted wings and it, killed its nanny and flew up the chimney, and, but, I think the way it may have started was, just a lonely woman, she had 13 children, apparently.
There's another possibility with this also, is that it could have a sort of a relationship to, if you recall, the famous Elephant Boy. It could have been a child that was, severely deformed.
Right.
And these stories build up around something like this. So we don't really know, but there's so many aspects that come into play that it's very difficult to separate these things.
Well, yeah, and then also to throw in the witchcraft side of it, or the witch's side of it, whenever a child was born, deformed or in any way, it was usually that they would point a finger at their neighbor who they claimed to be a witch, and she did it, So maybe that's where the witch tie-in came into this.
Right.
Maybe the child just had some problems.
Well, that or the deformities maybe perhaps the child had, was a sign of the devil, kind of thing.
She's like a psychic. When a psychic gets impressions, bits and pieces, it's like a puzzle. And, this piece, another piece, and another piece, and, when you put those all together, you get an entire, image on you of what's happening. And this is a similar situation with a person that looks like this, and a person that feels like this, or talks like this, and you put all these pieces together, and you add the witch to it, the deformity, and this is one of the results. And then they later on maybe added wings and things, and who knows on it. But as a story, any story, you can get 20 people sitting in a row, and you tell a story down one end, and they pass it on to the next one. By the time it gets to the end, and everybody adds their little twist to it, it's totally different. You don't even recognize it.
Exactly.
Anymore.
Chinese whispers, they call it.
Oh, yeah.
Or the telephone game, one of the two, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you have so many interesting things in the book, and so many little bits of stuff. And I was reading where the song Brandy by the New Jersey band Looking Glass talks about a spinster by the name of Mary Ellis, who became the inspiration from that song. And apparently she still haunts the banks of the Raritan?
Apparently, yeah.
What's the story?
Well, I believe she was a single woman. She had maybe a crush on I don't know what you would call him. I guess like a what?
A seaman.
Yeah, seaman. And she would always wait for him on the banks to come, from wherever he was sailing from, around the world. And even back as far as, I guess, 1700s, 1600s, 1800s, whatever, sailors would bring their girlfriends, things back, and she would always wait for him, and walk up and down the shores. And, now there's a movie theater there, but the Raritan River's still there. And, that's, Exit 9 on the New Jersey Turnpike. It's just a little north of Exit 9, and Rutgers College, New Brunswick, the whole area in there. A lot of things, happen on the banks of the Raritan, Native American Indians, things like that. So you're going really far back. And, actually her horse is buried in the parking lot of the movie theater. There's a grave. And that's, she would, I guess, ride her horse, to the banks of the Raritan, waiting for him. And, don't know if he ever came back. I don't think so, the way the story goes. I mean, I've heard that story since we were old enough to there was a flea market before the movie theater was there. And, when we were old enough to, drive with our friends to go to the movies, even the flea market, you heard stories. I mean, this is going way back. I mean, I'm 54, so this is going back to, when we were 16, 17 years old, probably even younger than that.
Well, that's a new one. A woman admitting her age on radio.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay, because with age comes wisdom. So but but it is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of little stories that you hear along the way, and a lot of them you remember. I mean, when before we could walk, we were going down the shore. So, all these stories you would hear growing up, and from friends and neighbors, and everybody's heard the same stories, and we've gone and checked it out even when we were younger, and lo and behold, there's a grave there. It sits above the ground, and there's a horse buried there, and that was supposedly her horse. So
we're kind of like that.
Yeah.
Poor thing didn't end up in the glue factory like so many used to. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's actually on the site where her house was there. The family home was there, and that eventually became, after everything was gone for years, it became the what they call the US 1 flea market. Big flea market was there, and that's since gone. There's a large movie complex there now, but they left this, and they made a monument out of this. And, the story as it goes, she actually died of loneliness, heartbroken, waiting for him to return, which he never did. So it's a sad story, I know it, but, and some people still say that they see her image, moviegoers, that park in the back where the parking is.
Right.
They see her image at times, some have claimed, I know it. So,
and the song's good, too. It's a catchy tune, so,
yeah, we all kind of grew up with that, too.
I know.
But we were talking about places of tragedy. And the crash of the great airship, the Hindenburg, stands out as one of our country's most terrible disasters.
Oh, yeah.
Do some of the passengers of this tragic accident still wander in Hangar 1 and on the tarmac?
Well, we've captured some pretty good orbs. I know orbs are very controversial, but, we've gotten some good things in orbs. And, it's that feeling. It's like when you go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or you go to a battlefield. It's the same thing, when you're out at Lakehurst, New Jersey, and you're out at the actual crash site, and you get those chills, and I would imagine, if you stayed there long enough, and when we've gone out to Lakehurst, we have to go through security clearances. They do background checks on everybody before you even step foot, at Lakehurst Naval Air Station. And we've gone out there, and I would imagine if we could stay there long enough, and you start to, like when we go on an investigation, you have to actually become part of the environment, to hear every little noise and every little thing, and and try to see if it's something that's out of place. I would imagine. The people that work there, see things. They see their fair share of things. So by us just going for a visit for an evening or a day, we're not going to have that same experience that they have. But they have seen, it was a lot of tragedy there.
Well, look, I'm looking right now on a manuscript about that, specifically about that. I live about 10 miles from the Navy base, from Lakehurst, and so far the incidents that I've been hearing about are just unbelievable out there. That Navy base, that Hangar 1, is so haunted, and as is the town of Lakehurst. It becomes dark in Lakehurst when the sun goes down. The whole atmosphere changes. And it's a very small town, very tiny town. And it's I sit on stormy nights looking out my back windows up at the sky. I have a clear view, and I'm anxiously waiting one of these times to actually probably see the ghost of the Hindenburg coming across the skies on there with it. But it's it's really interesting on there, and that it's a very haunted area. There's been many instances out there.
Well, yeah, and maybe on a small scale, we have these huge airliners that crash with, hundreds and hundreds of people on there, and so many tragedies. But at that time, I think the fact, obviously it was before my time, but if you look on YouTube and listen to the recording of the people that were there and watching the dirigible go up in flames, and the one reporter who was reporting the whole thing, and I guess his favorite line is, "Oh, the humanity." Right. People jumping out of the Hindenburg, some made it, some didn't, but what a horrible thing to witness as this thing is getting ready to land, and people are all excited because this was like the first trip it made, I guess, across continents or whatever. And then all of a sudden it just explodes, and it had to be a horrible thing to witness. It had to be a more horrible thing to be in the Hindenburg, actually, at the time. For the survivors, I can't even imagine what they were feeling. Was this something that is, there are many pictures out there that were taken that night, believe it, as fast as this happened. And one particular picture sticks in my mind as the explosion took place in the rear of the ship, near the very back of the ship is where it started. And as you may know, or from my first book that I wrote, World War II Ghosts, I have a feature on that, and I actually have a piece of the outer skin from that disaster.
That's in this book too, yeah.
Here's the whole thing in a nutshell. If you look at the one picture, I'm not, it's in none of the books yet, but the one picture shows the tail section of the airship, and you can actually see, the symbol that the Nazis put on the swastika. It was on all four fins in the back, and this is surrounded by fire, by flame. And I like to look at this from a point of view of, I'm saying to myself, that's thinking about what happened to the Third Reich, how it ended. And it's like fire to fire.
Mm-hmm.
The prelude might have been a prelude to World War II. It began with fire, and it ended with fire in flames. It's heart wrenching at times when you hear about all the horror that took place that night with the Hindenburg. It was something that obviously was totally unexpected. You know, and it took everybody by surprise with that. But the leftover, you know, the remnants that are still, you know, with us, and I think they're in the atmosphere out there, and you can feel it. As soon as you walk into hangar number 1, you can feel this. You can feel it. It's like you're walking into the past.
Is hangar number 1 where they took the wreckage and the bodies or something?
Well,
Is that why?
Did, well, the wreckage. I'm not certain whether it was immediately taken into that area. I know it, but I know a lot of it was loaded up in very short order on trucks and taken away because it was going back to Germany. A lot of it, but they did bring initially some of the bodies in there. But then they quickly transferred them to another small building nearby. So they had a small morgue set up in there. And there's a funny story about that, if you can think of it in a vein being funny. When they take tours through the hangar, they will make a rest stop at the restrooms under it. And that's the particular area where the people that are running the tours there, the Historical Society, claims that they had taken, you know, was part of the morgue area over there. And, you know, they'll make a little joke when, you know, people come out and they'll ask them, did you get the feeling anybody was looking over your shoulder? You know, while you were in there, you know. And then they tell them what that was or what they used part of that for.
And hangar 1 is so massive. All the hangars there, they're very foreboding, you know, and overshadowing. You know, they're gigantic, these hangars. So, you know, to just be in the shadows of them, you know, and to know what went on there, and you know how it docked. It was actually docked, I think, when it caught fire, and you know, it must have been still light out because it was only like 7:30 in the evening. It was in the spring, and you know, every year I think they have a memorial service there, you know, for the people that perished, you know, in the Hindenburg disaster. But it's an awesome place, you know, just the energy there. I mean, even for a psychic to go there, you know, the energy that they're feeling from it, it's almost like going to a battlefield, you know, and you can feel what went on. You can almost bring yourself back to that time period, you know, in your mind. And, you know, just imagine, I mean, I've seen movies of, you know, the Hindenburg, the story of the Hindenburg, and, you know, they found mail, you know, years and years and years later, you know, found mail because I think they were delivering mail. They were carrying mail on the Hindenburg. And, you know, it's kind of like getting a message in a bottle, you know, or a letter turns up, you know, from, you know, that somebody wrote somebody during the war, you know, and things like that. And they, all of a sudden you find it one day, and there's just so much energy and tragedy, and, you know, it's hard to swallow sometimes, you know. You just get that feeling and of sadness. It just overwhelms you, you know, the oppression that you feel when you go to a place like this. So, you know, some of it's happy, some of it's sad, you know, the places that we go to, and you can feel it.
Yeah, well, you know, places, they say, with an immense amount of tragedy really holds on to that, whether it's active hauntings or residual energy, it's still there, and it's palpable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's both there, you know, there's residual and, you know, active hauntings.
Exactly. Talk about lost souls, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of lost souls.
All right, so now I'm curious. What happens if a person circles the Devil's Tower in Cape May?
I haven't done it, but, you know, I'm not that curious. I'm curious about different things, but,
but not that. All right, so let's start by explaining what the Devil's Tower is, and then we can explain what happens if you happen to circle it.
Okay, the Devil's Tower. Dad, that's down by you, right?
No.
The Devil's Tower?
Not that I'm aware of.
I thought that was down by you. Is that down in Cape May?
Yeah.
It's down in that area. You were down there, Karen.
Down in Cape May? Yeah. I've heard of it. I've listened to the stories. The man built the tower so his wife could see the New York City skyline. The only problem was that she saw more than what she bargained for. So apparently,
Devil's Tower's up in North Jersey, isn't it?
Well, there's Devil's Tower in Cape May, and there's also one, I believe, in North Jersey. Supposedly, if you circle the tower 3 times, you're supposed to see the devil or something. But, like I said, I'm not that curious. And these are stories. I think there's actually 2 of them, one in North Jersey and one in Cape May. But I know my son's been to the one in North Jersey. But I don't think any of them are that curious to try it. I think they just, people kind of just stand there and say, oh, okay, so that's what that is.
Well, what was it that she saw? I mean, okay, so he built the tower so she could see New York, and then you said that she saw something, or she didn't like what she saw, or she saw something else. What was it that she saw? The devil?
She found that her husband was cheating on her.
Boy, she must have had really good eyes. I mean, how far away is the New York skyline from the Jersey shore?
I have no idea. I mean, these stories just go on and on and on. I mean, I've heard of similar stories in Pennsylvania. Actually, it's the college grounds now, out by the battlefield in Gettysburg. And there's yet another tower there. So, I guess there's a tower in every state, maybe more than one. But supposedly she saw her husband cheating with another woman or something. There's all kinds of local stories. Actually, there's one down by where our headquarters is, in Englishtown. That's a very historic town. It's just a stone's throw from the Monmouth battlefield. And there's a story about a woman on the lake there. And, supposedly she's caught her husband, cheating. So, I guess it's pretty widespread, but that's what supposedly she saw was her husband cheating on her. So, but like you said, good eyesight because, it must have been a clear day, but.
She must have had binoculars or something or a telescope to see that.
Yeah. There's some pretty wild stories.
It's just curious about all of a sudden how did the devil appear and, what's the thing about walking around the tower 3 times, how things just grow into something.
Right, you're supposed to see the devil when you circle the tower 3 times.
Well, I think, well, I'm mistaken, I think it was your son, Karen, that, or my son, Kevin, was up there too, I think, and I think they saw some type of a sacrifice, down in a pit area there or something, where there was some kind of animal was sacrificed. I know that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stories attached to those. I mean, there was a cemetery that we went to, and we stumbled upon a skull, and kids, teenagers, young adults, or whatever, go to these places and do these animal sacrifices, and But I don't like to talk about that, though. I like animals, so, I don't like to see that happen, but, people do some strange things.
All right, well, we could go to somewhere more interesting and a little less gory, but I understand that a couple of famous pirates, Captain Kidd and Blackbeard, still may be looking for some buried treasure.
Oh, no doubt. Well, let's see, we could start with Captain Kidd. There's a cemetery that we like to go to. It's down the shore, not far from us, and he's left several markers. He used several markers to mark where he apparently buried his treasure in between these markers that he uses, and some of them are trees, and things like that. And this one cemetery that we like to go to is in between some of those trees. And it's pretty interesting. It's and that cemetery that's a thing where, it's one way during the day, and as soon as the sun goes down, it takes on a whole different persona. It's all up and down the Jersey Shore. As far as Cliffwood Beach, Cliffwood Beach isn't too far from here. It's a couple towns over. And it's interesting. There's a pirate's house, that's in the book, that was Captain Morgan. The Morgan family was a very prominent family at the time. There's a churchyard where there's a pirate buried. His last name is Leeds. It's no relation to the Jersey Devil Leeds family.
no relation to the mom. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many stories about pirates in the book. People just have to really get into it and read it. And the pictures that we put in. I mean, I spent, the better part of a good summer just getting out there and photographing some of these places. So when they're reading the book and they see the pictures, they can actually feel that they've been there. That's how vivid everything is. But it's interesting. Pirates. There's nowadays pirates. Off the coast of Africa. I mean, they're all over the place. But these pirates were supposedly larger than life, and the way you imagine them. And the way they're portrayed. But it's just the whole coastline is interesting. The whole East Coast, not even, just New Jersey, but the whole East Coast, shipwrecks listen, pirates were before my time, so, your time and my dad's time, so, it's hard to imagine, but the book kind of places you there, and they can...
Why Schiffer Publishing decided to do the book in color, all the pictures and everything, because they didn't want to, use black and white because they felt it would take away, the impact. And
I'm really jealous because all my 3 books were in black and white, and after I got published, then they started doing color. Yeah.
So my first in black and white, the first 2 were in black and white, the pictures, and it does lack something. Black and white has its place when it comes to the photographs. But the impact that the color has is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to probably have to write a whole new book just so it'll be in color, to join in and the big kids now.
But you know what? It wouldn't be the Jersey Shore without it being in color. And, unfortunately, when the hurricane hit New Jersey and New York, and a lot of these, we haven't gone down to see, we don't want to be intrusive. I mean, people are trying to get their lives back together, and, a lot of people are homeless. But, when things calm down and, hopefully they're going to rebuild most of it, and we get a chance to go down there, it's going to be interesting to see, how much is left. And when the hurricane happened, I said to my husband, I says, this book is going to be a history book. I mean, it says history on the cover. I mean, it's folklore, and folklore is some of it is loosely based on the history and things like that. And I said, this is going to be a book that people are going to remember for a long time. They're that they can actually see what it was like, before the terror reigned upon, New Jersey. And it's just unfortunate. But, I said, I want to keep my book close to me because I want to remember it that way. And, there's a lot of good stories and a lot of good pictures to remember it by. So, in a way, I don't know, the book came out, I guess, at just the right time. And actually it was supposed to come out a lot sooner, so for it to come out now, everything has its place. you know, and I believe in, you know, the paths that we choose and things like that, you know, that this is the way it's supposed to be. So by this book being delayed for, you know, whatever reasons, this was the reason, I guess. And that's how I'm looking at it. So.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
All right. I think I want to go back to 1916 because Matawan, New Jersey in that year was a very scary place unless you were a shark, wasn't it?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's an interesting town. It really is a very interesting town. There's a lot of beautiful homes. You know, most of the geographically speaking, most of Matawan is dried up. You know, so you have to rely on the stories. And, you know, some of the buildings still stand, but, you know, geographically things have changed and, you know, things are no longer there that were there in 1916 at the time of the shark attacks. And it is a very, I wouldn't say a creepy town, but just for the simple fact that how did a shark get into the Matawan River? You know, is something that's hard to imagine, I guess. And, you know, I don't know if there's family that's still attached to the relatives that were there at the time. I know there's an awful lot of them buried in the cemetery. Some of the shark victims are buried there, and some, you know, were buried back in their hometowns. But, yeah, it actually started all along the Jersey Shore that summer, and Atlantic City included, I think. And I don't know. I mean, it's, could there be a shark in the waters? I would imagine so. Did they get the right one? I don't think anybody's going to know that for sure. The only one that would be able to tell you that would be the shark himself, but the captain's buried in the cemetery that, you know, killed a shark, and they believe that that's the one, but it's interesting because, you know, one of the shark victims was taken to St. Peter's Hospital in New Brunswick. You know, my son was born in St. Peter's Hospital in New Brunswick, you know, in 1988, and but the town is an interesting little town, though. I mean, you can picture what it was like back then.
Well, Karen, earlier we tried to also tie history in with this, and talking about Matawan, you have one of our chapters in the book, which is the Burroughs Mansion.
Right, right.
Call it a pension, but it's revolutionary. Goes back to the Revolutionary War, and that's got a very interesting story besides a murder that took place in there.
Right, right.
We investigated that.
Yeah.
Well, how many people were killed by the shark?
The shark. Trying to think of how many people there were. The little boy's buried in the cemetery. The man that tried to save him is buried in the cemetery. I'm just going to breeze through the book real quick because,
yeah, because it's kind of reminiscent sort of Jaws, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. Well, that's
the
movie was based on what happened in Matawan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there were 2 people dead before July 12th. I think there was a few after that. So I mean, there was, you know, a small number of people that were killed. You know, and especially in the town of Matawan. You know, because this all happened like down at the docks. You know, they were short distances from you know, one another. You know, in that small area of that town. So. I just have to refresh my memory because I'm actually reading the book to see how many people there were. But they've had movies about it. But yeah, they did. They based the movie Jaws on this. I think the movie took place I don't know, was it like in Boston or something? Or or
somewhere in
New York.
New England, I believe. Yeah.
I thought it was New England, yeah. And but yeah, no, they did. They based it on what happened, on the Jersey Shore that summer. But yeah, there were several, but I know there's two buried in the little cemetery in Mattawan, but they were mostly kids. They were mostly kids and young adults.
Yeah, that makes it even worse in a way. In a way.
Oh yeah, well, this particular cemetery, the little boy, he was born in 1904, died in 1916, and he every year you'll always see stuff on his grave. You'll always see little toys, no matter when you go back. And what was interesting was the little boy. He's kind of buried like his plot is in like a low area, and it's actually near. There's like a little, I guess, a little pond there, and that kind of creeped me out. I guess he had no choice where his burial plot is because some of his family members are buried there also. But the man that tried to save him was a young adult, and his gravestone is on a higher elevation. But what's interesting is his grave overlooks the younger boy's grave.
Oh.
So even in death, transcends from life, into death, that he's still looking over him. He tried to save him that day in 1916, and he's still looking over him, in death. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But it's funny how things work out that way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, somebody in the chat room a while ago was wondering, talking about folklore, how many hauntings have to do with the mob. Was there anything? Because everybody's seen The Sopranos, and
yeah, bad example. Jersey Shore is a bad example. I don't know. I mean, the Boardwalk in Atlantic City. It's just Boardwalk Empire. That show on HBO. I just, every time I'm on the Boardwalk in Atlantic City, I always think about that, and I'm sure there were a lot of murders, but as far as being tied to New Jersey, I think a lot of mob business took place in Atlantic City. The speakeasies and, all those things. And those hotels back then, during like Prohibition, they were huge, these hotels. I mean, they're huge now, but when you look at the skyline of Atlantic City, it just, to me, I picture it so much differently, back during Prohibition. And, a lot of these resorts, back in like the 1800s, massive. And I just think about all the things that happened, the meetings that took place, and, liquor, was illegal. So, I mean, it probably was flowing in Atlantic City, but, I mean, as far as mob hits and things like that, I when I read about things, and see things, you associate a lot with the bigger cities, New York and Philadelphia and Chicago and things like that. But, at one point, Atlantic City was a hot spot. And, I'm sure there probably were, murders and things like that. But, I haven't found too much on the subject, which is kind of interesting, in itself. But, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people buried under where those hotels once were. So,
Probably so.
Yeah.
All right, now we're almost running out of time, but I really like the black butterfly in the Robbinsville Cemetery. How did that come to be, and is it still seen?
Well, that's the first time I've ever seen a black butterfly. Now, I don't know, maybe I live under a rock. I know, not this past summer, but the summer before, I started seeing a lot of the monarch butterflies. But we went out to this one cemetery, and one of our group members the butterfly landed on her finger, and it wouldn't leave. And the psychic says to us, it has to be a spirit. If it's not leaving, it has to be a spirit. It was just so bizarre, but I've never seen a black butterfly since then, since that trip to that cemetery. But it was just, it wasn't going anywhere. It was a friendly, but it wasn't afraid. It wasn't, it was very unusual to see a butterfly do that. And like I said, I've never seen a black one. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
You said in the book that it basically hangs around a young child's grave.
Yeah, there is a young child buried in that cemetery, and her name is Deborah Lincoln. And she is related to Abraham Lincoln. It was his great aunt, who he never met. She died when she was, I believe, 4 years old. And that's where we first started seeing it. It was right around that little area. And like I said, it just wasn't letting go. And maybe it was her. We can't be sure. But it was interesting. I mean, her little gravestone is just a stone. That's exactly what it is a stone. And her name is etched in it. And she's, kind of cordoned off a little bit, in this one little area. But maybe it was her. I mean, stranger things have happened, but, to me, butterflies are heaven sent anyway. So, it's very possible that it was her.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about one more quick strange thing.
Okay.
What were German U-boats doing in shallow water around Sandy Hook?
I'll leave that one to my father. Dad, I'll let you take that one. Are you there? Hello?
I think we lost him, actually.
Did we lose him?
Yeah. Well, it was good timing if we did. Yep, I think we did lose him. But this was during World...
That's a story that we'll have to table, or they'll have to read about it, I guess. That's his specialty.
World War II, yeah.
World War II.
Exactly. Well, it is about time anyway. So where can people buy your book, and where can they find out more about the both of you as well?
Okay. The book is on, it's available at Amazon.com right now. Actually, I just checked Amazon.com today, and they have 8 copies of this book left.
Okay.
But people are more than welcome to go to the website. They can go to my website for the group is www.njghostorg.com. And they can get some information about the book there. They can email us if they want us to, mail them a copy. They can send us a check. It should be in the Barnes & Noble's bookstores. They can get to my dad's site. If they go on njghostorg.com, they'll go to my links page, and there's a link for his website there. It should be down at the Paranormal Bookstore in Asbury Park soon. A lot of the independent bookstores, I think, will start carrying it along the Jersey Shore. Barnes & Noble should start having it really soon, too. I have to check out the Barnes & Nobles, but it's out there.
Great. Well, it's a fascinating book with a lot of fascinating stories that we didn't even get to cover, but that's why people need to go buy the book and find out all about New Jersey, because there are people talking in the chat room that didn't realize that New Jersey was quite so interesting. So that's a very good thing.
Well, thank you guys in the chat room. So
did a little promo for the Garden State.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both, and you can pass this on to your dad.
I will. I think his call might have been dropped or something, but we thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it.
It was great having you, and please do come back. And speaking of thank you and coming back, everybody, I want to thank you all for listening in as well. And again, please come back. So until next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at the same time for another great guest and more fun. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2009.
You have been listening to the Para X Radio Network.